We've got it. All right. Good morning, everyone. We're slowly gathering and people are coming into the chat and into the call today. So welcome. I think we'll just wait a minute. Would that be fair? Because I see a few people. Leah's coming. Livia's here. Anna, yay. Anna, you're here twice, which I love. All good. Oh, I see how you can. This meeting is being recorded. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, the funny thing is it says I'm Johanna, but obviously I'm not because I'm hosting this meeting.
Oh, yeah, exactly. An alias.
I wonder if I can just change that. I don't know if I can. I don't want to mess it up.
I think people know. Good. So now numbers are climbing up. This is all good. And we also know that a lot of you guys will watch the recording later, which is super helpful, especially if you're working. So we're excited to welcome you today. Mariana, nice to see you. Abucha. Got my coffee. Hello. All right. We're getting there. All right. When we hit 10, I'm going to start. We're going to wait for one more.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, we're at 10. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, parents out there. I want to welcome you this morning. Johanna's at a birth, so I'm going to take over and do my best with no sleep because I was at one last night. And we're all good because we're talking about sleep. Anahita, she is a good colleague and friend of ours. We love her. We love her because she's the only holistic sleep coach here in Singapore. We've worked together for 10 years, which is hard to believe. And she's a wealth of information and just wonderful to have her as always. So this is all about you guys. We want to make this session about your questions, your concerns, your specific unique situations, and to try to educate and hear what's important to you. So please raise your hand. Please add your questions in the chat at any point. We'll get to all of them as best we can. And if we don't, we'll get to them at the end. Usually our speakers are kind enough to go back and to respond individually. So welcome, everyone. And we've got a nice, and this is always a great talk because everyone is hoping to get more sleep or better sleep or, better quality sleep. So Anahita, do you want to introduce yourself? I've given you a tiny intro, not much.
Sure. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I'm Anahita or Anahita, whichever rolls off easier. And I'm a gentle and holistic sleep coach and a certified postpartum doula. And I actually started working as a sleep coach about 5 years ago when I got certified by the Holistic Sleep Coaching Program in the UK. It is the only really comprehensive, it's an OCN level 6, which is like a university level course. It takes at least 6 to 8 months to complete, unlike some sort of sleep certifications, which can be done in like a few weeks. And it is a very comprehensive, holistic perspective on sleep. It is entirely evidence-based. So it's really focused on ensuring that our practice is in line with what the research is currently telling us. I'm also a mom. I have 2 girls. My oldest just turned 18 a couple of weeks ago. And there she is yelling in the background because she doesn't have school today. And my younger one is almost 14. So yes, definitely past the sleeplessness stage, thankfully. There is hope because they want to sleep all the time and they never want to wake up in the morning. So it does flip.
Absolutely. The pendulum swings from one to the other. You just wait. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I'm there.
You end up having these mornings where you wake up in the morning and you're like, wait, I'm the only person awake. This is terrible. Like, I need to go back to sleep. So yeah. And yeah, I'm really here to answer everyone's questions. I'm also happy to throw in a little bit of information. And I did want to talk a little bit about my approach. And I have a slide, which I'm going to try and share. Let me just see if I can pull that up effectively. And I'll show you. So just so that I'm super clear, because hang on, sorry.
All good.
You can see that, right?
That's just perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really particular about sharing my approach because I do feel that when people reach out for support, it should be in line with what they're looking for, right? So I'm always really upfront and honest about my approach. It is really based on building secure attachment and on sort of responsive parenting. We know that sleep is a bit of a minefield in terms of the information out there, and I'm always very particular that this is top of mind for me, is preserving attachment and ensuring secure attachment in those first 4 years of life. And we largely do that through responsive parenting, right? So responding to your child's needs, tuning into what they need. That doesn't mean that every time they cry you have to go running to them, but we do want to support them and respond to what they need. I also believe in providing evidence-based care. If the evidence is skeletal or thin in certain areas, and like I said, the course I've done is extremely focused on this, I don't use those strategies. So it's really important to me that we stick to what is really shown to be evidence-based. I support children mostly from 0 to 12 years old, but largely I don't like to do anything very interventional with children under 6 months. The first 6 months is a period where a lot of that reciprocity is developing between parent and child, that bond is developing, and I feel like coming in and intervening with that often messes things up. So once babies turn about 4 months, we can start doing gentle things like working on sleep hygiene and things like that. But I will not do any kind of real interventional sleep support until a baby's 6 months old. And really, it's about looking at a very holistic perspective. We're not only looking at sleep, we're looking at, how are you getting rest in other ways? How are you taking care of yourself so you're not feeling so depleted to support sleep? How are you, how is baby feeding? What's their temperament like? What kind of developmental stage are they at? All of those things play such an important part when it comes to sleep. So yeah, that's pretty much a little bit about my approach, and looking forward to hearing everyone's questions.
I love that. So yeah, and I think that that's why we love you so much, is that, what you've done, the studying and the evidence-based, research is really what sets us up for success. And I think a lot of the time it's just meeting our expectations. Do we have realistic expectations when we have babies of, are they a good baby? Do they sleep through the night? Is that realistic? Is that something we should be, achieving? And one baby to the next, right? Some of us, I've had 3, all very different kids, all very different in so many different ways. So the temperament, there's so many elements to how we can look at it. And so I guess, what should we be expecting as new parents, or when in that newborn period? Maybe we could start there.
Yeah. And I think this is a huge question because a lot of the time, parents are just kind of a bit shocked when their babies arrive, right? Because babies are born with no circadian clock, no body clock. They're basically on a very fragmented kind of sleep pattern, but it is so important for their survival. So nature designed babies to sleep in a certain way so that they can not only survive, but thrive, right? They don't spend a lot of time in deep sleep. They're really spending almost 70% of their time asleep in what we call REM sleep, or light active sleep. They will not sleep for long periods of time because they have to keep waking up, not only to feed, but also to, again, form those bonds, to securely attach to their primary caregivers, which is so important. And so nature designed babies, newborns, to sleep in a certain way, right? In fact, in the newborn period, it is only what we call sleep pressure that determines sleep. Once babies start developing a body clock, then you'll start seeing things shift, right? At night, they're still waking up, but they're still going back to sleep quicker. And maybe they're a bit more awake in the day. But I think for new parents, the number one thing I would say is set yourself up with support. so that you're not having to do it alone, especially because, you know, living in a place like Singapore, you may be away from family, but you can reach out to your community, to friends, to get professional help or helpers or whatever, to at least ensure that you have some space and time, and to be able to reframe what rest looks like for you, right? So rest is not going to be 8 hours of night sleep. It's going to be sort of more fragmented. It's going to be resting in the daytime. So really trying to work to get yourself that support so that it's not all on you at that time. And I think largely that lack of support is what has driven our societies, especially in the West, towards very sort of interventional sleep training approaches, because they have no choice. Because, you know, families are having to go back to work at like 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 3 months or 4 months. And they don't have any family support. They can't get professional support. And as a result, there's this huge push towards independence and sleep. So yeah, that's kind of like what I feel for a lot of new parents to be prepared for.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, it's unique. We're in Singapore. Most of us have helpers, or we have an extra set of hands here and there. Of course, nights are always the issue. And, you know, as doulas, we certainly get this as well. But putting that expectation, I mean, not only as babies, like they're designed to wake more, they're designed to startle, to remember, breathe. There's all kinds of physiological development, right? And the brains are actually not are developing so rapidly that we know that they're supposed to wake up. If they're sleeping too much, it's actually a problem. Going back to sleep pressure, what does that mean? Can you explain how? I know what it means a little bit, but can you explain what you mean by infants at the beginning? They sleep well, but a lot of it is because of sleep pressure, or
Okay, I'm going to share a slide. So essentially, all human beings, just at a very physiological level, have two main sleep systems. So these are the two systems that are really determining when we sleep and how we sleep, right? So the first is, of course, our circadian sleep system, more of our like external sleep system, where our body clock gets defined by daylight and night. And that happens pretty organically. It does help to like keep your babies in daylight for a good sort of like 11, 12 hours of the day, and keep the nights very dark and calm. And usually by about 6 to 8 weeks, they, I'm using my hands too much. So Zoom was like, you're putting your hand up. I was like, no, I'm not putting my hand up. Sorry. So usually by about 6 to 8 weeks, that circadian clock is starting to develop, and, you know, parents will start to see a little bit of that consolidation in night sleep, because also what happens is that the body starts producing melatonin at night, right? Now, the other sleep system is our body's homeostatic sleep system. It's really linked up to all our homeostatic functions, which is basically, you know, our heart beating, our lungs breathing, all the things that we don't have to think about doing. It just happens automatically, right? And the way we like to talk about this, to describe it, is to think of a tank, a pressure tank. So when you're awake, pressure rises in that tank. And when the pressure is high, the body will release chemicals telling us to go to sleep, right? And when we sleep, that pressure comes down. Now, for young babies, that tank is tiny. So that pressure is going to keep rising. They're going to keep needing naps, whether it's a 10-minute, 20-minute nap or a 2-hour nap. That pressure is going to come down. Then they're awake, and it comes down like that. So that sleep pressure system will keep going up and down through the day and the night. So when babies are born, it is only homeostatic sleep pressure that is determining when they sleep, which is why we often say, like, they don't know the difference between night and day. They're up at night equally as much as they're up in the day as well.
Got it. Yeah. Perfect. That definitely really good, clear explanation about that. So I guess we can maybe, do you want to head to some questions? I've got more, but okay, let's do that. So ladies that have just joined us, please, and parents rather, please type your questions in the chat, or raise your hand if you're brave enough to show your face. We would love to see you. Anahita, do you see I'm just trying to go to the chat.
I do. I'm trying to look for questions for newborns. So just we're in that. Okay. I see that Okay,
Yep.
there's one about a 3-year-old, but it also has a question about a 3-month-old.
Sure.
That's from Leah, and she's going back to work soon. Sleeping really well from 8:30 p.m., but I'm needing to wake him up around 2 a.m. because my boobs are killing me. How
Yeah.
is everyone managing this? Definitely out of my expertise area, because that's feeling like more of a lactation thing. I wouldn't think, like, if you could manage your supply, I wouldn't think that you need to wake him up, right? If he is sleeping through on his own, he's kind of like gaining weight well, all of those things. But I think that is definitely more of a lactation question,
Yeah.
a lactation management question.
Yeah. We can address that, Leah, later. Johanna
Yeah.
and I will get back to you about that one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that just expressing out a little bit at that time so that your breasts are not getting too full. But then, of course, I would defer to a lactation specialist there. And she also mentions about her 3-year-old going to sleep at 7 p.m. but waking up at 5. How do we push it out so he wakes up later? He has dropped his daytime nap. Okay, so I mean, I think in terms of shed, it really depends. Like, how long ago did he drop his nap? Often when they drop their nap, they need to go to bed earlier, but they're still waking at a later time. And it might be that he just needs 10 hours at night if he's waking up really nice and fresh in the morning. But it could be that, you know, it's just the adjustment period from dropping the nap. So you might want to see what happens if you play around with the bedtime, like experiment with what happens at 6:45. Does he still wake up at the same time? What happens if you do 6:30? Or what happens if you do 7:15 or 7:30, something like that. So it could be worth it to just experiment a little with bedtime. I would always stay at one particular bedtime for 3 days just to see if that's really clicking or not, because usually it takes a little bit for that circadian clock to adjust. And in this case, I would go earlier first rather than later. Yeah, but I think it would take a little bit more sort of understanding of how long ago they dropped their nap, how much were they napping, is there a huge sleep loss, what's their mood like in the day, what's, you know, he doing, is he really exhausted in the evening, those kind of questions coming back at you.
Yeah, so sorry, in response, I'm just feeding, that's why I'm not on camera. So he in regards, so by 7 he's exhausted, like he's proper knackered, and he dropped his nap a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually be saying if we can get him to bed at 6:30, because he's waking quite early at 5.
Yeah.
Right. And so if he's so there's, you know, often many reasons for early waking, but one of them could be that he's just very overtired when he's going to sleep. So you could try pulling his bedtime back just to see what happens with that. I would stay at that for a couple. If he's still waking up at 5, at least he's getting more sleep, right? And then what we can do is we can slowly start shifting the day in 15-minute increments every sort of 3 to 5 days to try and shift his circadian clock forward. But I would start earlier just because I want to see if that, I would want to see if that brings him to the same wake time or even later. Is his early waking largely because he's just very overtired when he's going to bed?
Yeah, really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That's great. Do you want to move on to Divya?
Yeah.
We're talking about, this is the 3-month regression. Hi, I'm deep into the 3-month regression. My baby
4
is
months, I think.
Oh, sorry. What did
Yeah.
I say? I can't
3.
read. I can't read.
No.
Okay, thank you. I'm super tired. 4-month regression. My baby is 5.5 months old, and we've moved from holding, carrying to sleep to touch to sleep, which is, of course, has come with its own set of tiers on both sides. So I like this question because it was actually something that I was going to ask as well about carrying, rocking, swaying, you know, motion and all that. So her questions are, how long does it last? And it goes on and on. Will it change once we start the solids? We don't use white noise as we don't want to create another crutch. And I'd like to know about that as well. Are these really crutches, Anahita, or are they ways to inspire peaceful sleep? I'd like to know that. And day naps are going well, but we still have the night wake ups, usually from 3 to 5 a.m. and 4 to 6 a.m. But it's important. So you see this question as well. You answer it as you would like.
Yeah. So I mean, I do want to talk a little bit about what happens during that 4th month sleep change. I hate calling it a regression just simply because it is not really a regression, but I acknowledge it feels like a regression to parents, right? And largely what's happening at this stage is that, you know, that newborn sleep where you're spending a lot of time in light sleep, the body starts going, hey, wait, I'm doing really well. I'm gaining weight. I'm feeling really secure with my caregivers. I don't need to sleep like this anymore. And so the sleep architecture, the architecture of the sleep cycle starts changing to a more adult-like sleep pattern where you go through multiple stages of deep sleep and you actually spend a lot more time in that sleep cycle in deep sleep. So it shifts from about, 60 to 70% of light sleep to 60 to 70% of deep sleep. This is a great thing, right? Because a lot of that sort of like light sleep, the random eye movement, the exorcist eyes, as I call them, starts settling. They can actually be put down more easily. They might actually be able to connect sleep cycles more easily. But because this is such an elemental change in our sleep architecture, it takes time to happen. Now, while it can be quite acute for a couple of weeks, I often will see that it can take about 4 to 6 weeks to really see them start to come through the other side of that shift. And so most babies will start seeing the impact of that change around 5.5 to 6 months. So like you're seeing now, Divya, that you're at that 5.5 month mark. It also depends when they kind of came in and started having that progression, as we like to call it. So it is a very elemental change. It will usually last about 4 to 6 weeks. And starting solids really does not impact sleep. Now, what we know from research is that overall calorie in the intake in the day will determine the calorie needs at night, right? So if your baby is not feeding much during the day, maybe they're very distracted, maybe you've gone back to work and things are a bit awry, but usually they'll start making up for that at night, as we call reverse cycling. So essentially getting enough calories through the day is what counts. And when you start solids, you do it slowly, right? They're not getting a lot of calories from food. So it's a bit of a missed expectation there that, we'll give them solids and they'll sleep well. And another thing that we'll see is kind of topping them up or sort of making sure they have a nice full stomach before going to bed. That can help with milk, but at this stage, to give them a lot of food before going to bed often leads to other issues, indigestion, or that really just heavy feeling in the stomach or feeling uncomfortable because I haven't had the chance to digest the food properly before going to sleep. So in fact, we usually say leave at least an hour and a half gap from the last meal to bedtime. But of course, you can tank them up with milk, right? So solids, not immediately, but once they've ramped up to 3 meals a day and a snack, then of course, yes, they're getting a lot of calories from that food. So it might help with the sleep. In terms of white noise, I think I'm kind of just neutral on this. I feel like a lot of parents, if you're room sharing, find white noise very irritating, right? And so it's not a necessity. It's not a crutch either. I think if you have it on and it helps, great. The key with any ambient sound is to keep it at 50 decibels or less, right? So you can have it slightly louder while the child is going to sleep, move it to a lower volume once they are asleep. And of course, many sleep consultants will say to keep it on the entire night or the entire sleep period, right? So you don't have to. It's a very personal thing. I personally like using nature sounds much more than white noise. So if you want ambient sound in the room, it can really help to use sounds of the rain or sounds of the sea or wind, or even things like a fan on in the room can help because that also generates some ambient sound. And those are much more palatable sounds for parents, especially if you're room sharing. So that's on white noise. The waking in the early morning, look, that's really quite normal because, again, melatonin starts dipping by that time. So you're not getting a lot of help from your body. A lot of babies are waking more frequently at that time because they just need a lot more support to go back to sleep because they're not getting a lot of support physiologically. And they might be getting pretty topped out on their sleep pressure by then, right? So they're not really getting a lot of help. It's also good to look at what time they're going to bed. is that realistic? So if you want a slightly later wake time, then maybe they need to go to bed later, right? Especially for younger babies who are still napping quite a lot in the day. So yeah, I hope that answers all your questions, Divya.
I just had another question just to add to that. So when she does wake up at like 3:30 in the morning, at the moment I am responding by feeding her. I'm giving her milk because I feel obviously she's hungry. She's been sleeping since like 7:30, 7:45 p.m. So it's been quite a long time. So right now I am responding with milk. But I know that they say that after 6 months, they don't really need that overnight milk, right? So again, that's a big question mark. Like, will she need it? Will she not need it? Because I don't know if I have the heart to. This is my second one. With my older one, I did do the sleep training. I don't think I have the heart to do it
Yeah.
this time round. So
The question is, who is saying that? Who is saying they don't need milk after 6 months?
Google.
Yeah. I mean, I would be, if I again were to look at what the evidence base says, we're seeing that almost 60+% of babies are having at least one night feed between 6 to 12 months.
Okay.
That is the developmental norm. And I can share these studies with you, right? Almost 78% of babies are waking 1 to 3 times at night between 6 to 12 months. While most pediatricians will say they don't need it, the actual fact is that developmentally, many babies and more babies than not are having those feeds. So, you know, it again goes down to, do you always take lactation advice from your pediatrician? Or do you go to a lactation consultant who's really kind of like studied this and got certified in understanding this? Because the amount of exposure that medical professionals have to like sleep literature or research or lactation support is very, very limited, right? So again, I always go back to the evidence base, and the evidence base is suggesting that if at 5.5 months or 6 months or 7 months, if a baby's having like 1 or 2 feeds, that's very, very developmentally normal. If they were waking every hour and a half to 2 hours and needing a feed at 8 or 9 months, then yes, I would be looking at to shift some things there. But it sounds like she's sleeping really well for this age. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with the touch to sleep, it has changed a bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Anahita. We're going to move on because we've got lots of great questions here. And one that kind of crossovers from Anna about our 5.5-month-old needs to be bounced to sleep, naps, and at night, and he gets heavier. And we're struggling with this. And it's only myself and my husband that get him to sleep, really. How can we help him learn new ways of falling asleep? He also cries at almost every nap unless I feed him to sleep. So we're talking about that motion, rocking, swaying, and then also nap times.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I totally get it, right? Like babies start feeling heavy, and a lot of these practices that we had from when they were babies start to feel unsustainable. What's really a great way to go about it is by doing what we call habit stacking, which is really a term that was coined by Lindsay Hookway, who's the creator of the holistic sleep coaching course, or what we call gentle behavior modification. And habit stacking is based on the psychology of stacking on a new habit with an old habit, right? So for babies, and when we're trying to shift how they fall asleep, we actually will stack on some additional cues while doing the old cue for a period of time. Usually helps to have like one physical cue, so like a patting or a stroking or, you know, anything that the baby likes. It helps to have one audio cue, like the parent singing a song or using some sleep phrases or your white noise or whatever. You could even grab like a little comfort object or a lovey every time you're doing it, and then stack those on consistently while you're doing the bouncing. Right? And after a few weeks, what happens is the baby starts recognizing those cues as being comforting because you've layered them on at the same time as the already comforting cue. And then you can start reducing the bouncing. So you can either do that really slowly, where you just sort of like, you bounce a bit, you stop, and then you get to a point where you're holding, but you're not bouncing. And then you get to a point where you put them on a bed and then you pat and shush or whatever you've done to get them to sleep. So I like the gentle behavior modification because you're actually giving your baby some tools and cues to use once you want to make the shift and move away from whatever cue is feeling unsustainable. And for the day naps and crying, look, day naps are always going to be harder Babies are always going to need more support, whether that's, contact naps, feeding to sleep, all of that stuff. And I think it's absolutely fine to do that because honestly, at the end of the day, all the naps go away. And I think we obsess too much about naps in general, right? The fact is that there's a lot of sleep literature out there, which is specifically a lot of literature from Pam Douglas out of Australia, where her contention is that we're just making babies nap a lot more than they need to in the day. Do they need to nap? Yes. Will babies nap when they're tired? Most often. And so it really does help to take a little bit of focus out of that nap and just be like, you know what, if feeding gets my baby to sleep, I'm just going to feed them. But focus on the sustainable cues at bedtime. That's the key time that we really want to be able to make things feel more sustainable, getting babies to fall asleep in their sleep space or where they're going to be continuing to fall asleep. That's the main focus of most of my sleep support as well. Because shifting things at bedtime tends to have the best impact on the rest of the night.
Wow, that's so interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow, fascinating. And I love that idea about naps aren't as important. They're going to drop them anyways. And also, I wonder, in my day, 1,000 years ago, that was my time. The nap had to happen. Are we also having to reframe, how we see a nap? Is that our break and the pressure that it puts on ourselves? I don't know if that's...
Yeah. I do like to tend to take away the focus of being able to do anything for yourself only when babies nap, right? Why are we not prioritizing that even at a time when babies are awake? In fact, sometimes it's easier to hand over a baby to somebody when they're awake and go do something for yourself than when you're trying to get them to sleep or they're sleeping.
Yeah.
Right. And so I totally get it. I loved it when my babies napped. And I loved it when they slept. But it's also a little bit, if you have a baby who struggles with day naps, some babies are fine. Some babies are just serial cat nappers, right? They just will not do more than 20 to 30 minutes in the day. And that can be hard. So in those cases, reframing that a little bit can help. Making sure that your needs are met, that your self-care is taken care of outside of nap time can be helpful as well.
Good point. Good point. All right, Anahita, can we move on to Michelle's question? This is about, she's saying, baby is 4 months old and keeps on wanting to roll onto his tummy to sleep. Is it safe at 4 months? And we try to roll him onto his back, but he keeps wanting to roll onto his tummy again. Not sure if he's doing that for comfort as he's constipated and he only poops once a week. Previously, he was pooing every day and in the first 2 months, but the last couple of months, it's like he forgets how to. So let's, I guess, address the idea of is it safe if he's rolling on his own at 4 months old onto his...
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't think he's doing it because he's constipated or having indigestion. The likelihood is that he's just learned how to roll and he's going to do that because it's just naturally a more comfortable sleeping position for most babies and human beings, really. The majority of human beings sleep on their tummies or their sides. And sleeping on the back is not a very common sleep position. So it could be that he's just like, hey, I figured out how to do this. This is amazing. Let me just get here. Now, most often, once babies can roll both ways, so roll on their tummy and roll on their back, we say let them be. You do not need to roll them over because they also have then developed enough neck strength to be able to lift up their head if their head gets squished in their sleep space, right? We also are looking at, are they in a safe sleep space? Are they on a firm mattress with, no sort of extra additional bedding? If you're bed sharing, then making sure it's a safe bed sharing arrangement. And if they are, then we tend to encourage them, just let them be. And 90% of the time they're sleeping better because of it, because they can get on their tummies. If you're feeling that he's not super comfortable rolling from his tummy to his back yet, try giving him lots of practice in the daytime as well. So putting him down on firm, hard surfaces, letting him practice those skills a lot in the daytime can help him master that, so that at night you don't have to worry. Because honestly, it's just not realistic. Like, how many times are you going to wake up at night and turn him around, right? And it might happen that he turns and you don't even realize it. The fact is that he has been able to turn, he has enough neck strength to do so, because as you might notice, once babies start turning, they have to be able to lift up their neck to do it, right? So if they have that strength enough, the likelihood is that they will be able to lift their head up if their nose gets squished. But most babies, you'll notice, will turn their head to their side. And if they're turning their head to their side, then it's perfectly fine.
I love that answer. And we do get that question quite a bit. Dr. Janelle also showed us some interesting things last week about how to encourage babies to do that rotation from belly to back. So have some really good notes on that if you guys want to check that out. I know Johanna just posted that. But so what I love about this is that we're talking about not putting our babies on their belly, but if they can go to the belly, that's okay because of that. So all we do then is create safety around that. No toys, no fluffy bumper pads, lots of space, no pillows, for example. Pillows are usually a no-no as well. And we as doulas, we see this a lot. So I think that's really important. Thanks for that answer.
Yeah.
Okay, do we want to move on to the next question? Again, ladies and gentlemen, please put those questions in as we go. Mariana, so is there anything to keep in mind when setting up the room for a newborn to facilitate sleep? We've talked about this. Temperature, we get that question a lot. Any items that would be good to buy, like a white noise machine? I think you've kind of addressed that, but go ahead.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that, in Asia, we'll see, I mean, a lot of us sleep with air cons, but I'll see like people putting the aircon on like 24 or 26 or things like that. Like the parents are like sweating in the room and the baby's like, so just from a physiological perspective, the human body actually sleeps best in cold temperatures, right? Matthew Walker, who's like this sort of like global sleep authority, talks about 16 to 18 degrees centigrade, which most of us will be like, that's freezing. And so I think it's about sort of keeping the room temperature comfortable to how you're feeling, just remembering like based on how your baby's dressed. And more than anything else, I like to put my hand on the baby's chest or back between their shoulder blades to check what their core body temperature is feeling like, because their extremities will be cold. Hands, feet will always be colder, but I want to check what their core body temperature is feeling like. And if it's feeling good up against your hand, like similar to your body temp, then it's likely that they're fine. I would say for a range about 18 to 22 degrees centigrade, right? With the appropriate clothing for the baby. There are lots of like clothing guides by temperature out there, but I think cooler the better, always, for sleep.
So I think what I will say though is that newborns, we're talking new newborns, can't regulate their temperature, so that might be a bit cold at the very beginning. I don't know. Yeah. But then we start to bring them home from the hospital, and as things progress, I think that makes really good sense. Do you have any comments about sleep sacks, swaddling? Those are things that we also talk about in some countries. Swaddling doesn't anymore because it prevents that Moro reflex where our babies need to wake up as newborns to remember to breathe. Actually, there's so many developmental things that they're doing, and hands at the face, versus putting them down like a straitjacket. Almost all babies that I see are Houdini. They'll come out of the best swaddle,
Sound machines, no problem, as long as it's not like disturbing you. Swaddles, again, definitely prefer with arms up. Babies like to have that. That's such a natural position for them. Sleep sacks, once they're out of a swaddle, sure. And also that swaddling is not necessary. Like, it's not the only way your baby's going to sleep well. For a lot of babies who aren't swaddled, when you put them down, it can actually be helpful to put them down on their side, hold them for a minute, and then roll them over onto their back, because that can prevent a little bit of that Moro startle reflex, because when you're putting them down backwards, that tends to come up more. But I think, again, I'm pretty neutral on all of this stuff. it's your own family, what your cultural heritage is, what your traditions say, what feels good for you and for your baby, because every baby is so different. Sort of trying out different things and being open to experimenting a little bit to see what works best.
Awesome. I love that. And I do think that that is a big part of it, that people have to remind that they come from different cultures. There's different ways of sleeping. There's a lot of people that bed share and there's a lot of people that don't. So there's no right or wrong way necessarily. What's working for your family? Does it make sense to you? And, you know, and Dr. Google is the worst doctor out there. We've all done it, myself included. So yeah. Okay, Kara, she has a question about, my son is 12 months old and we're really struggling with naps. He sleeps from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. We dropped the night feed recently and he just wakes up in the p.m. for about 15 to 30 minutes crying, but then falls asleep on his own. If he goes longer, we just rock him. He's ready for a nap at 10 a.m. and can sleep 2 hours, but then will not go down for his second nap later in the day. But he's so overtired and cranky by dinner time. I've tried dropping one nap and putting him down close by putting 12. I'm not sure I understand that.
Yeah, I got that. Like by pushing his nap to closer to 12 p.m., but then he takes well over an hour to get down.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So
nap. So that's what she's saying, just for the other.
So just to like kind of first of all address the fact that, Kara, this is a very common time for this to happen. I'll see a lot of 12-month-olds resisting a nap in the day, right? And it's largely developmental because they're doing a lot of stuff and learning a lot of stuff. Life is exciting. They don't want to sleep, right? Most often it'll just settle. So you keep offering the 2 naps, you keep trying, and then things start settling. But I will say this. If he's waking at 7 and sleeping by 10, and he sleeps for 2 hours at that morning nap, there is no chance you're getting that second nap in the day, right? Unless it's at like 4 o'clock in the evening. So my suggestion to you would be to actually do a shorter first nap. So try an hour and a half, try an hour, see what happens. Like, is that easier for him to get down for a second nap in the day? And you keep trying until you're really 100% sure he's just not going to start resuming that second nap. I think he will, just because he's quite tired and cranky in the evening. And eventually, if he just doesn't, then you just come down to 1 nap. So for children on a 2 nap schedule, usually there'll be a day that looks like short, middle, long. The shortest gap before the morning nap, a medium gap, usually about 3.5 hours between the 2 naps, and at least 4 hours before bed. Especially at a year old, I think he would be needing at least 4 hours before bed.
I love it. That's great.
Did you have a follow-up question, Kara? I think you're muted.
Yeah. You're muted, honey. Oh.
Oh, she's typing it. She's typing it.
Ask to unmute.
I think I can unmute her.
Yeah, I can't. I'm sorry.
Oh, I can't either.
Ask to unmute. Okay. Sorry, Kara. Okay, maybe we can come back to you if you type it for us, love. That might be a little bit easier. Okay. All right.
I think there was a question about safe sleep, and I do want to address this because I feel it is important.
Yes.
Safe sleep guidelines, I do want to say that it is very important to adhere to them, whether you're bed sharing or whether your baby is in a crib or a cot or a floor bed, whatever option you choose, there are different ways of ensuring that they're in safe sleep spaces. If they're in a crib, then like you said, Diana, we want a firm mattress and nothing else in the bed. If your baby has a lovey, which is this question, and they're under a year, or I would say under 9 months, I would be taking that lovey out of the crib once they're asleep, right? Now, if you're room sharing and your baby's right next to you, so the crib is right next to the bed, you feel like you have enough consciousness to be checking at night. If it's a tiny lovey, that's really not going to come in and like cover, or if, you know, if it's a big blanket, then you definitely don't want that in the crib. But I would encourage parents to like at least until they're about 9 months old, take that lovey out of the crib because we want to adhere to those safe sleep guidelines. If you are bed sharing, there are safe bed sharing guidelines issued by La Leche League, by BASIS, and we definitely want to follow those. We want to have a breastfeeding parent, parents who do not smoke or drink, a baby born at term, a really firm, nice mattress, and minimal bedding. So like basically talking about like individual covers for each parent with one pillow for each parent, right? We don't want like 10 pillows in the bed. And adhering to those and doing it intentionally is the most important thing about bed sharing. Accidental bed sharing is very common, and you will fall asleep with your baby in your bed at some point in that first year. So it always makes sense to ensure that your bed is a safe sleep space.
Yeah. I think also for sofas, right? I think even more so, soft sofas where we have our baby on us. I find a lot of people also fall asleep there with their babies, right?
Oh yeah, accidental bed sharing is actually the biggest risk, right? We definitely want to ensure we're not falling asleep with our babies on recliners, rocking chairs, couches, all of those things.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest one, and honestly, I feel the one that's had the most impact is room sharing for at least 6 months, right? I mean, I think that has been the biggest differentiator once safe sleep guidelines were issued, that sharing a room is the most important thing because you're right there. You're hearing baby sounds. Your instincts are so tuned in. Often you're waking up before your baby wakes up, right? And that's the research that they have on like breastfeeding mothers will often wake up before their babies wake up because they're like so in tune with it. So yeah, it is. I'm not sure why we can't unmute people. Isn't that weird?
Because
Can you hear me?
I can.
oh,
There.
good.
Okay, sorry. This will be a super fast question. It was about the nap in the morning. You said to wake around like 1 hour or an hour and a half. What I've read is that the baby sleep cycle is around 45 minutes at this point. Should I try stopping it at that 45-minute mark, or it really doesn't matter to go to that 1 hour or hour and a half?
It really doesn't matter. I think the main thing is how much is it depleting that sleep pressure in the tank, right? So then the tank needs that much longer to build up sleep pressure again for that next nap. So if I sleep for 2 hours, that tank is completely depleted. But maybe if I sleep for an hour and a half, there is a little bit of pressure left. So it doesn't have to start from zero building up before the next nap, right? I mean, that's the logic just from a science perspective. So you could, I would always try the lowest amount of sleep loss first. So if he's doing 2 hours, cut it at 1.5. How does that impact the rest of the day? Try it out for 2-3 days. If you don't see an impact, cut back to 1 hour 15. What happens there, right? So it's really like just about experimenting a little bit, and there'll be multiple points in a child's life where you have to tweak schedules because overall their sleep needs are coming down, right? So
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for figuring out the unmuting for us.
Yeah.
Okay. And we've got another, I'm going to try to unmute you, Cyril. I see your message. I'll do my best, but perhaps we can go to Pavrita's question in the interim.
No, I think Cyril has been able to do it.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Hello.
Show your lovely face. You don't have to.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just walking in the street because I'm just out from a little gym with my babies, but I really wanted to attend the call. So sorry if there is any noise on the background.
No worries.
So it's very interesting. So I have 3 kids, one 3 years old and the twins of 10 months. The twins, so I have 2 questions. The twins, they sleep in the same bedroom just because it's well, I thought it was good at the beginning. I like the concept of creating a, like a bond together. And because it's a bit convenient as well, we have 4 bedrooms and they are all occupied. So it's convenient as well. So this is the question. I'm struggling to put them to bed at the same time. So maybe the first question is how can is it good to put them together or does it impact their sleep? And the second part is I need to wait for my son, who is a very good sleeper and quick to fall asleep. I put him down first, and my daughter wait, and I put her down then. But they have a different schedule. Can I fix the schedule? How can I solve that? How can I make them sleep and, you know?
Yeah. The fact is that every baby will have a unique amount of sleep that they need. And this, I'll see it with twins all the time, where one twin is more high sleep needs and one twin is more low sleep needs. And therefore, it's really hard to sync up their schedules. Right? Now, likelihood is that once they, are older, they've dropped their nap, you'll be able to hit bedtime together. Maybe one twin will be waking up a bit earlier than the other one. But in the meantime, it might mean that you have to have slightly variable schedules, or one twin is just not napping as much as the other twin. So for example, that last nap, if let's say one twin is doing an hour nap, maybe the second twin who's low sleep needs, you cut that nap at 30 minutes so you can align their bedtime, right? Because that twin needs more time to build sleep pressure for the night. So again, as with all schedules, I always say that the best way to tweak it is to experiment and see what works best for them. So it's likely that it will be tough to align. I do like the idea of twins sharing a room. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think as they get older, they actually like that. And once they have that bond, they like having a person with them. Everybody likes having a person with them when they sleep, right? So it might be nice for them as they get older. It's just a little bit about like tweaking, identifying if one of your twins is low sleep needs. So like they're doing fine with just that less sleep. They're happy, they're thriving, they're growing and developing, right? But they're just not sleeping as much. You know that they're low sleep needs. So then you can start tweaking so that you can say align bedtime. Maybe they start their day earlier than the other twin. Maybe they're napping less in the day. There's different ways that you can look at trying to align that.
Okay, thank you very much. That's interesting. And then the second question was my toddler, so he's 3 years old. I feed the baby, the twins, at usually between 7:30 p.m. And my toddler, he has dinner either with them at 6. So I noticed the fact that you said we need 1 hour and a half before bedtime, which is not the case, because usually everyone in my house, they have dinner at 6. And I put the twins to bed at 7:30. So it's just a bit less than 1 hour and a half. And my toddler usually has sometimes, I don't have time to prepare the dinner at the same time of the twins. So he has dinner a bit late and later than them. So sometimes he goes to bed like 45 minutes after dinner. So maybe this is the issue, because then I cannot put him to bed. So I put him to bed at 8 p.m., but he keep going out of the bedroom, and he wants to be with me. So I understand the concept that he has, 2 brothers and sisters, and he wants his alone time with them. But I think it's just as well maybe the dinner that is too late, and then he wakes up at night. So once to check that I'm here usually, and second time for toilet break.
Yeah. Well, in this case, I doubt that it's just the dinner. First of all, he's 3 years old. He's probably moving around a lot after dinner anyway. The likelihood is, and the bedtime resistance in toddlers is largely due to a need for connection with parents. They've been apart from you the whole day. They haven't had a lot of time. They want some one-to-one playtime with you. And that can be huge in terms of filling their cup before bed, or what we call love bombing. And 2, it's because they're having a nap in the daytime and their bedtime is just too early based on when their nap is. So if he is napping, just push his bedtime out later. If he isn't napping, then again, experimenting with when his bedtime is.
Yeah, it's a good point. Actually, he has, I don't know at what age you drop the afternoon nap. He still has his nap, and sometimes he easily goes to 1.5 hours, and sometimes closer to 2 hours. So he wakes up at 4 p.m.
Oh, if he's waking up at 4, there's no way he can go to sleep at 8.
Okay.
Yeah, come on. Like
But I want to
usually
keep
we're
him,
looking
yeah.
at, for this age, he is going to need about 6 hours from his nap to his bedtime.
Oh,
So the
wow,
day
okay.
gets very long. So either you cut that nap to 45 minutes or an
Okay.
hour tops, or you offer him bedtime at 10 if he's
Okay.
waking up
And
at 4.
what is better for a kid? Is it better to have a good, nice nap or to go to bed earlier? Is there something better? Like, because I'm always, it's difficult for me to wake him up. You know, he feels very nice and comfortable in his sleep, and it's difficult to wake him up. So, is it better to shorten the nap or to go to
Honestly,
bed
I
later?
think that's a very personal preference. I don't think there's one that's better than the other. If you're someone who likes your afternoons, you like that break that you get, then yes, long nap. If you're someone who likes your evening and you like to have that time with your partner or have some time to yourself, then short nap and early
Okay,
bedtime.
but
There is no
from his
like,
perspective, okay.
no, there's absolutely no problem with
Okay.
waking up children. Yes,
Okay.
they are going to be grumpy. They will take 20 to 30 minutes to get out of that inertia, as we call it, that sleep inertia. But once they're out, they're fine. And, you know, he's going to likely be dropping his nap soon anyway. If he's already 3, usually between 3 and 4, we're dropping naps consistently.
Okay.
So that will kind of take care of most things. Yeah. Deanna,
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
conscious of time. I know that we have
Yeah,
a few
Thank
more
you so much.
questions.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for your question. And yes, absolutely. I think, do we just have one more? I think if that's,
Yeah, I think there was that one question on the bed sharing, and then there was also another parent who had a question about co-sleeping. So I can maybe address both of them.
Yeah. Perfect. That would be
Um,
great, Anahita. Thank you.
Yeah, so 6-month-old baby bed shares with us. We tried other methods, but this is the one that seems to work well for now. She seems to wake up in the early morning around 2 or 3 a.m. and I nurse her, just wondering, are we spoiling her by bed sharing? And is there hope for a smooth transition to the crib? I do want to kind of just highlight that bed sharing is the norm in more places in the world than not,
Yes.
right? And it is not spoiling a baby because, in all honesty, this is how nature designed babies to sleep. Most mammal babies will sleep close to their mothers until they are fully weaned. That is nature's way. You will not see animal babies being put in a separate room or a separate sleep space to sleep. So there is no way that nature could have designed something to spoil babies. Right? Now, it's a personal preference. I'm not saying that everyone has to bed share, but the fact is that babies will always sleep better when they're near their caregiver. Why? Because that helps to regulate the nervous system. They feel safe and secure. And when I'm feeling safe and secure, I can always sleep better. I don't have to be in that fight or flight state where I'm worried of like an impending attack, right? Like that's how the body is designed. If you are bed sharing, then please do that safely. Look at what safe bed sharing guidelines are. They're all over the internet. You can search the Safe Sleep 7 by Lale Shalik. Basis has some really great handouts on bed sharing and how to do that safely. And there's also a lot of research on extended bed sharing and actually how this creates more independence in children in the long term than not. And I think that's the largest question that bed sharing parents have, that if I bed share for too long, what impact is that going to have on my child? Are they going to be more dependent on me? But if we look at basic attachment theory and research, the fact is that a more securely attached child will be more independent, right? Because I have a secure base and a secure attachment, it's much easier for me to let go. And therefore, an extended bed sharing child is feeling very securely attached. And then most often it's, easier to transition them to sleeping in their own room, or whenever you're ready for that shift, you can do that. And I think that was a question that one of the moms had, was about their 3-year-old starting to bed share with them for the last 3 months. And how do I get her to move back, right? So I think in these instances, it could actually be nice to just give them a little bit of time. And then one parent supports the child to move into another room So they still have the parental support, and then you sort of gradually fade away that parental support for them. Yeah. So that's that.
Love that. I love that. Yeah, I love that analogy too, that as mammals, a lion doesn't have her baby and then put her at the tree across the way. You know,
Yeah.
that there is a primitive connection. We are all mammals, and this is how we're supposed to develop.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
beautiful. We have to
Ah.
reframe how we think about sleep and what makes sense in terms of our physiology. I think
Yeah.
that's great. And I
There's
do
a really wonderful BBC article called The Science of Infant Sleep. If you just search that up, it should pop up for everyone. And it really does bust some myths around like all of this, like, oh, I shouldn't feed my baby to sleep, or my baby has to sleep in another room. And a lot of these kind of like Google myths, which I believe are put out by the sleep training industry to sort of fearmonger parents into paying huge amounts of money to sleep train their kids. But I will say, you know, that understanding the science behind infant sleep is very reassuring. And that's a great, I send this article to everybody I talk to about sleep.
perhaps we'll share that one. We'll
Yeah,
give
I'll send you the link.
And
Yeah.
you know, I think that that's it for time. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
we're at 11, but thank you so much. I think we got a lot in there. I hope everyone had found that really helpful. I mean, I certainly did. I don't. Thanks everyone for your questions and your patience. Anahita, you're amazing. I love all the work you do. I love how
Thanks, Diana. I always love being here.
questions right off the top of your head, not my talent. Okay. So have a great week, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And we will post this on our YouTube channel. We are so cool now that we have that. Can you believe it? And we will make it available, all the resources as well. So have a
Okay.
good afternoon, everyone, and a good lunch. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you.